HOA Karen called 911 while I built my lakeside cabin, so I banned her HOA from the entire shoreline. Have you ever had someone call the cops on you for building your own home on your own land? That was my Thursday. It started with birdsong, that kind of sweet lakeside silence you don't realize your soul's been craving until you finally get it. I was finally laying the foundation on my dream, a simple log cabin on a plot I inherited from my granddadland that's been in my family since before the damn HO even existed. I had barely gotten the first corner beam upright when I heard the unmistakable sound of clunky sandals slapping gravel. And then her voice shrill and theatrical, like a bad actress in a courtroom drama. "What do you think you're doing?" I turned, saw the figure I'd been warned about. Karen, the HOA president from the community 3 miles down the ridge. Obese, sour-faced, with a permanent scowl etched in her cheeks like she was allergic to joy. She had a clipboard clutched like a Bible and sunglasses too small for her wide-set glare. I wiped the sweat from my brow, building my cabin, on my land. Her face scrunched like I'd farted in church. This entire zone falls under Lakewood, HOA's jurisdiction. You can't just erect structures without proper HOA approval. That's when I laughed. Actually laughed. Because here's the thing. Lakewood HOA has no legal claim to this part of the lake. Never has. My family owns the deed outright, including 200 feet of shoreline. I knew that. She didn't. And I could see her ignorance blooming in real time behind her twitching eyelids. "Ma'am," I said calmly, "this isn't Lakewood. You're trespassing." She didn't even blink. Just pulled out her phone and dialed 911 right in front of me. "There's an unauthorized construction happening on restricted HOA lakeside property," she reported to dispatch, glaring directly at me like I was squatting in the middle of a national monument. I let her talk. I let her dig. But the moment the sheriff pulled up 15 minutes later, it was my turn. "You have proof of ownership?" the deputy asked. "Oh, I've got more than that," I said, pulling out the original handwritten deed from 1938, stamped and notarized in the county archive just last week. Karen's smugness flickered. "Additionally," I added, "you might want to take a look at this." I handed the deputy an injunction filed just this morning, a preemptive legal move my lawyer advised, because Karen had a reputation for pulling stunts like this. The injunction confirmed that Lakewood HOA had no authority here, and that any interference would result in legal action. The cop nodded, folded the paper, and turned to Karen. "Ma'am, you're trespassing. Step back." And right thereof, the satisfaction Karen's face went from smug to stunned to stammering in under 5 seconds. She tried to argue, claimed there was historic precedent and a verbal agreement from a 1992 developer, none of which held water, or land, in this case. But it didn't stop her. Oh no. 2 days later, I came back to find my paint stolen, the cabin beams slashed with a hatchet, and survey tape torn from every tree. And that's when I snapped. I filed charges: vandalism, trespassing, interference with lawful construction. And since Karen had filed her 911 call as an HOA matter, I had grounds to involve county zoning and environmental protection, especially because she'd driven over a protected nesting zone to investigate. But that's just the start, because the real counterstrike, that came next. My granddad's deed included not just the lot but rights to the entire northern shoreline of the lake, extending past several parcels the HOA had quietly been using for their own community beach and kayak storage without permission. So I did what any furious, legally backed man would do. I revoked all shoreline access, filed it with the county, installed signs, put up fencing, and then I rented the land out to a bird sanctuary nonprofit. Now the Hokaran's precious little empire can't so much as touch the water without breaking environmental law. And they're furious. Karen called another emergency meeting, accused me of destroying the neighborhood ecosystem, tried to rally neighbors to file against me. But twist number one of her own board members flipped. Turns out he's an attorney and he publicly admitted during the HOA meeting that Karen never had legal authority over my land. He called her out in front of everyone, citing every overstep she'd made and warned the HOA that they could be liable for her rogue actions. Twist number 2? Turns out, the land Karen drove across to yell at me, it wasn't just mine. It was a known migratory turtle zone, flagged by the state. So I filed one final report with the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Karen's vandalism wasn't just criminal. It was ecological sabotage. And now, she's facing $25,000 in state fines, 2 misdemeanors, and a full ban from all county-held lakefront lots. Want to know the cherry on top? That cabin I was building? I finished it. I named it Peace and Pines. And I've invited every single neighbor not part of the HOA to come visit, fish, kayak, and camp free of charge. Karen? She can only watch from the community parking lot 2 miles away. It wasn't enough for Karen to be embarrassed. She needed to be in control. Always had. So even after the police citation, even after I revoked every inch of shoreline access, she went on a personal crusade. She started printing flyers about me, calling me the lake squatter, and claiming I forged the deed. I heard she even tried hiring a private investigator to dig up dirt. Too bad the only thing they found was how her HOA had been violating shoreline usage laws for over a decade. See, Karen thought she ran things. But what she didn't realize was how fragile her empire was and how fast it could fall once people stopped being afraid. I wasn't the only one she harassed. After everything went public, neighbors started talking. Stories came out. She'd find a war widow for flying a flag. She'd made a family tear down their accessible dock ramp because it was not aesthetic. She'd bullied an elderly man into selling his lot for pennies, then flipped it to her cousin for profit. So when I released the drone footage of her stomping on my property markers, yelling into the phone, and ripping signs out of the ground, the whole town saw it, and it went viral. I didn't post it myself, no. I sent it to a local reporter. A guy named Harris who'd been itching to crack something bigger than potholes and pancake breakfasts. He did a full expose titled, HOA Tyrant Faces Legal Reckoning at Lakewell Shores. The comments exploded. That's the woman who stole my garden statue in 22. She fined my mom for using a walker on the community trail. Someone give this cabin guy a medal. The footage was damning. Karen, red-faced and furious, grabbing caution tape, yelling in her phone, falsely accusing me of being a trespasser while clearly standing on my posted property. People didn't see a leader, they saw a bully caught in the act. And then came the formal complaints. 3 residents filed grievances to the HOA board. Then 6 more. Then 12. The HOA's own lawyer resigned after discovering Karen had forged signatures on multiple board-approved letters, including one that authorized use of the shoreline she never owned. Within 2 weeks, the county demanded a full audit of Lakewood HOA. And then the real collapse began. The audit revealed misused funds, fraudulent permits, and a series of violations involving Karen's pet projects, including a gazebo that was illegally built on a floodplain and paid for using community dues. The HOA insurance policy dropped them. The board voted to dissolve. And the final nail? Karen herself was slapped with a restraining order, not just for me, but for 2 other residents who came forward with proof that she'd entered their homes uninvited under the guise of HOA inspection. The woman who called 911 on me for building a cabin on my land now couldn't legally come within 300 feet of any lakeside property. But justice didn't stop at her removal. Once the HOA collapsed, I helped spearhead a new community alliance voluntary, nonprofit, focused on nature preservation and resident autonomy. We called it Shorestead Collective. No forced dues, no lawn mowing rules, just support, protection, and peace. Funny enough, the same families Karen tried to bully into submission, they now paddle up to my dock every Saturday for coffee, canoeing, and the weekly bonfire. We roast marshmallows. We share stories. And every now and then, someone points across the lake toward the empty HOA lot, now taped off by environmental protection signs, and says, "Remember when she thought she owned all this?" And we laugh. I did eventually invite Karen to one of our open meetings, not out of spite, but out of principle. I told her publicly in front of everyone, Apologize, and you can come back. But only as a guest, never as a ruler. She refused, of course, marched off red-faced, huffing, swearing the HOA would rise again. But it didn't, because when you build something on lies, it collapses. But when you build something on truth, on community, respect, and good old-fashioned grit, it lasts. And my cabin? It's not just a home anymore. It's a symbol. A reminder that no matter how loud the Karen screams, the deed still wins. So now, every time I walk down the dock, breathe in that pine-scented air, and feel the breeze ripple across the water, I smile. Not because I won, but because I stood my ground and others stood with me. Because power doesn't come from a clipboard or a phony title. It comes from knowing your rights and being damn brave enough to defend them. Now you tell me, was I wrong for banning an entire HOA from land they never owned in the first place? True or false? The end.